The Harvard Negotiation Project is comprised of communication scholars who teach people how to do mediation. A mediator is the person who is the referee in a bitter contract dispute or a bitter disagreement. He or she is the person who sits there and helps people talk in productive ways. After doing this for years and years and years, the Harvard Negotiation Project came out with a statement that said, based on their experience, the number one problem between people who disagree with each other is this: we only trade conclusions with each other. We don't stop long enough to understand how you arrived at the conclusion. What's interesting about the book of Proverbs is that the ancient Jewish writers who comprised that book understood what the Harvard Negotiation Project was talking about. In a very interesting proverb, they say that the thoughts of a person are like deep waters, and the job of a good communicator is to surface those thoughts so we understand the history of a conviction. Well, consider the situation of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is one of our best American innovators, but he was also a perfectionist. He was a man who was maybe even a narcissist. Brilliant, but impossible to work with. Eventually, he'd get fired by Apple, the company that he created. Jeff Goodall did an interview with Steve Jobs and uncovered some of his background. And in this essay, he says the most interesting thing about Steve Jobs is that he was given up by his birth parents for adoption. He suspects that Jobs' perfectionism is an attempt to convince his birth parents that they were wrong to give him up. Now, understanding that background information does not make Steve Jobs easier to work with, but it might produce a little bit of empathy. It might produce a little bit of sympathy. So understanding a complex person like Steve Jobs helps us understand and produce compassion when we understand his specific background, the history of his convictions.